for you now this morning from beautiful Miami. We're in the Brickell area, and we are live to everyone that is watching us from wherever you are. It's we're in Eastern Time here in Miami, and we're going to record this for all of you that are going to watch it from other places in the world at a different time. So I have with me here from my left to right, we have Eric Schneider. He will introduce himself later on. I have to my left Andrew Littleman. He's been with IMTC for quite some time, from almost the beginning in 2010. Joshua, and your last name?
Radbot.
Yeah, Radbot. I was not going to try that. So Joshua Radbot.
You got it.
Okay. So Joshua is here for the first time with us in an IMTC or Platinum Network event. And Joe Chicolo.
Yes, sir.
That was good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Joe, he's been to many IMTCs before. He comes from the crypto and blockchain world. So this is a very diverse group, and we're going to start first with some introductions. I have told them to spend some time telling us who they are, what involvement they had in payments, because as you will see there, I love how this industry is bringing so many people from so many backgrounds together. So we start with you, Eric.
Thank you, Hugo. I appreciate it. It's wonderful to be here. So as Hugo mentioned, I'm Eric Schneider. I've been in the financial service industry for well over 20 years. I've got the gray hairs to prove it on that. But as Hugo's allowed us a little bit of extra time there to speak about our backgrounds, I think it would be worthwhile to take a step further back. I'm not giving my whole childhood story, but highlight the fact that I've lived abroad for most of my life. So growing up, I was born in the United States, however, lived in Montreal, Canada, then Sao Paulo, Brazil, then Caracas, Venezuela, then Mexico City, Mexico, and then studied in the United States and have worked my career over here. A couple of highlights that I want to mention that I started through with financial services is I started off on the investment banking side. And that gives you a very business-to-business focus perspective, which I eventually shifted into the high net worth side. So I was in private wealth management for a certain period. And then after grad school, I joined the firm to really focus on the consumer side.
Grab this better, I think. Good.
Right. Okay, there we go. And so after joining Citibank there, I was able to take a look at the consumer side in a lot of different perspectives. It was consumer lending on the mortgage side, on the banking side, on credit cards. And I really like the credit card niche. So I shifted into American Express. And at American Express, I did the relationship management side growing. And if you could tell by how much I talk, I'm in sales. And that's a standard one on that part. And then an interesting thing happened. At the end of 2014, I had an opportunity to join a fintech. And I didn't know fintech at that time, but I knew that it was a sexy word. I liked the people that I was speaking with at the time. And I said, let's do the jump. And since 2014, I've been in the fintech side. And what a palpable difference it's been. At first, I hated it. And I'll tell you guys why. There's not as much structure when you're joining a small company from a Fortune 500. The infrastructure in place, the policies and procedures, the best practices to go through. But one is able to develop that along the way. And I've really appreciated that side. And so I'm a fintech person through and through. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the future as far as what I see of the juxtaposition of a traditional company versus a fintech when it comes to the compliance side.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Andrew.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Andrew Littleman. I'm an attorney here in Miami. My background is in criminal defense and then white-collar criminal defense, and I've sort of expanded into different practice areas, primarily focusing on regulatory issues and compliance. And in the areas where I work, typically it's because I learned about that area in a criminal case that I had. I don't do nearly the same type of criminal work that I used to do, but I was introduced to fintech and money transmission and anti-money laundering issues, and the notion of an unlicensed money transmitting business in a couple of prosecutions that I defended back in 2005 and 2006. And this was really when the Patriot Act was starting to gain traction, and the US government was really figuring out how to use the Patriot Act not to address terrorism issues, which is what it was designed for, but to use these laws that were created or expanded to handle things that were purely domestic and white collar and not dealing with terrorism at all. And so that was really how I learned about MSBs and fintech and anti-money laundering. And then I became sort of active with the NMTA and then the IMTCs, and I really took a liking, not necessarily to fintech per se, although I've done quite a bit of that work. But I've always been fascinated by international remittances and the way that you can sort of study the one industry, money transmission, and really get a better understanding of the world, of how different countries or different cultures interact with one another through these remittances. And for me, it's been as much of a story of sort of the cultural issues that are exposed by remittances than anything particular to the remittances themselves. And that's always been what I've enjoyed most about handling payments, particularly on a global scale. Beyond that, I am a lawyer in Miami. Miami is an awesome place to practice law. It really gives you a great perspective on sort of where we are in the universe. And I've been able to sort of pivot a lot of that regulatory knowledge to for companies that are not payments companies per se, but still need to have compliance programs in place because they present money laundering risks of one sort or another. So I've been able to help develop compliance programs for companies in Miami that buy different types of electronics and computer parts and video game systems. They buy them in the US, they sell them into Latin America. It presents a serious compliance risk, and they need anti-money laundering programs the same way money transmitting businesses do. And that's really, at the end of the day, what Miami is great at. Miami is great at accessing or whatever the object or thing might be in the United States, and then selling that thing into Latin America or other parts of the world, and being able and willing to absorb the credit risk that is presented by those transactions, simply because their understanding of Latin America is so good. And it's the folks in Miami that really have those relationships. They've been able to do the due diligence on the customers in Latin America, figure out the type of compliance risks that are out there. And it's very similar for, if someone's selling some widget into Latin America, they have to have a similar sort of compliance infrastructure that the money transmitting businesses do. And to me, it really connects everything in my mind as far as living and working in Miami. And, it's been a really great experience to learn that, keeping in mind that unlike this guy over here, I'm much more of a gringo. And so learning about all of this has really been awesome, really like mind-blowing over time. And I hope to be able to continue doing that for the rest of my career.
Thank you, Andrew. And Andrew has been also part of the advisory board of IMTC for a number of years. We've done a lot of things together. We have introduced clients to one another. Some of the clients that have come to Andrew for legal compliance reasons, I have helped them develop the business side of things, the relationships with the industry. So it's been a very interesting partnership. We've been in cases together where my expertise in the industry was needed. I learned how to. I was trained by Andrew. Say this, do it like this. I'm going to ask you that. And for me, really knowing you has always been learning experience. every time Andrew sees news that they think, okay, Hugo has to know this, and he's just right on, Sometimes there's so much information going on that you cannot, get him, and so I have to, thank you very much. We work together in the formation of the MSBA, the
Right.
Money Service Business Association.
That's right.
Now Eric here is part of the board,
Okay.
so. We had the first meetings with Connie Fenchel and discussing, we needed an organization that was more than 5 years ago. I mean, you drew some of the first legal documents for the association,
right.
and it's great to have seen, what Kathy Tomasovsky and the different people that have, done the work of putting the MSBA where it is right now. So now we're going to shift to Joshua, totally different scene. So
Thank you, Hugo, and thank you guys so much for having me here today. So I'm Josh Radbod, co-founder and CEO of the PBC Conference, which is the B2B conference for payments, banking, and compliance in the cannabis industry. So we bring together cannabis operators, financial institutions, payments companies, lawyers, investors, pretty much the whole B2B ecosystem together with the government, so legislators and regulators, to try to move the industry forward. And we're in our third year now. We have a conference coming up September 9th and 10th. Check it out. So outside of the conference, I'm also an attorney at Cogent Law Group in Washington, D.C., where I lead and manage the firm's fintech practice and cannabis practice. We work with a lot of companies that are trying to figure out, whether or not they're a money service business at the federal level, and thereafter whether or not they need to be registered as a money transmitter in the different states. We also work with companies that are trying to do token offerings of that nature, and we're working with a few companies that are launching remittance payments and using stable coins to do that. So some really fun stuff, and very happy to be here.
yes, and the interesting thing, and that's why when I was introduced by Joe, and I said to Joshua, look, it's so interesting is that is this industry, money transfer is diverse. We're going in different areas. Cannabis, of course, it's a complex issue, and some companies don't want to deal at all with it. I don't understand, which is something that some companies still say about cryptocurrencies. So it is that our minds have to expand into things that we may not be comfortable. We just have to learn about them, and that's why when I met you, I said, come, let's work together, because we have to collaborate and help the companies. I mean, there's payment companies that are looking at cannabis payments. They're jumping in that. They think they have their compliance figured out to be able to, look at regulation. It's not only, it's a state regulation. There's the federal level issues that you have to take care of. So, I'm so glad you are with us, and I said, we will collaborate with your event, and just bring the industries together, because they are in fact in payments. So
certainly, yeah, and these industries share a lot of the same regulatory compliance issues and banking issues. So for a time, there were more banks that were willing to work with MSBs than cannabis companies, and now that may even be starting to switch. And cannabis is federally illegal, so it's really funny how that works out. But we can go into that stuff later. So
yes,
thank you so much,
Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hugo. Great to be here with everybody at the Reg Alliance conference. So my name is Joe Ciccolo. I'm the founder of BitAML. We are a regulatory compliance advisory consulting firm. We focus on AML compliance, writing compliance programs, conducting independent compliance reviews, training, exclusively for crypto companies. So we work with Bitcoin ATM operators, exchanges, traders, trading platforms, crypto hedge funds, crypto lenders. So basically financial institutions engaged in crypto-related activities. As well, a growing part of our practice now with the consultancy is to work with banks that are interested in crypto in one form or another. It may be a positive interest. It may also be a negative interest in that they're trying to learn a little bit more about some of the red flags and what to look for and how to mitigate the risk at their institution. Another hat I wear is I'm the co-founder of ComplyFit, which is a regulatory app that enables money transmitters to manage their state licensing across all 50 states. So obtaining a state money transmitter license, I'm sure our attorney friends here will tell you about that process and what that entails. But managing that license, ongoing paperwork, renewals, and other advanced change notifications, et cetera, that need to be made are an ongoing task. So we designed a Regtech application for that need based on our experience working with crypto exchanges. A lot to manage there for sure. So I appreciate the fact we have some interesting stories here. My story of how I got into crypto. So if you're ever in the crypto space, for those of you from the crypto space, we always talk about going down the rabbit hole. And that's a nice way in the industry of saying, how did you get into crypto or hooked onto crypto? My story is pretty interesting. So my background is in traditional bank compliance, about 15 years, various different areas of fin crimes, from fraud prevention, corporate due diligence, and of course into AML. So I was working for an online bank, State Farm Bank. It has since been sold off. And at the time, I was attending a conference and I heard about this crypto thing. This was back in 2014. I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. Started to do some research, and I was so proud of myself. I wrote to the president of the bank, and I said, we are an all-online bank. We've got to get into crypto. This is going to be really exciting. We're going to grow our base. We're going to appeal to some young people and technology-focused individuals. We're really going to just take off if we offer these services. And I sent this in, and several months later, hadn't heard back. The holidays went by. I said, okay, well, maybe I'll hear back eventually. Finally, I got a letter back from the president of the bank. So excited to open it up. It was this scathing message that only criminals wanted to do cryptocurrency, and none of our customers would ever be interested in anything like that. And I was very taken aback. A couple months later, I left and started my consultancy. Come to find out, around that time, and this is a few months after I sent that letter and gotten the response that I did, USAA had participated in the investment round into Coinbase. It was their C round, and I think the valuation was a 250 million or something like that at the time. Of course, it's many magnitudes more in valuation today. But to think at the time, that was the bank's response. Now I know banks move slow, but it would have been nice to see maybe a conversation about that. So for those of us in traditional banking or come from traditional banking, we know how difficult it is to make that connection with senior management, the board. But these discussions need to happen. You know, we don't want to have other stories like that where traditional banks miss an opportunity to at least have a conversation. I think you owe it to yourself, if you're at a traditional institution, to do the research, get to know a little bit more about crypto, and then, yeah, maybe down the line, make a decision about partnerships or how you want to get involved in the space.
Great. You know, thank you so much for that story. And I'm going to tell you, the first time we had a session on crypto, on Bitcoin, was in 2012 in an IMTC conference. You were there, I think. I was. And I did a debate between the Bitcoin evangelist, can't get his name in my head right now, and a professor at the University of Miami. And I thought it was going to be a great debate. The professor said, no, crypto is not going to take on, doesn't have any sense on a macro level, and he will go into his graphs and things. And I said, it was interesting. I told him, look, I'm going to invite this. Oh yeah, let's go to the debate. It was a mess. I was trying to moderate this, but our crypto evangelist had one screen and where Bitcoin trades were happening, and he was calling them off just to throw the other guy out of it. So he was saying, look, $1 million, blah, blah, blah. And the guy was trying to come up, and he was getting increasingly angry with this. And I was trying to be very nice. I'm trying to be respectful. Okay, thank you very much. Well, it was very funny. Really, I was frustrated, but it became funny, and it ended. And then I walk out, and the main sponsor for the event that year was a bank. And the owner of the bank who was there came to me and I said, Hugo, stop that crazy stuff. If you keep on promoting this, this will be the last event that I will sponsor. And I said, Mr. Whatever, I look. This is an event where we discuss things. I just bring things. I think this is interesting. I don't know if it's going to take hold or anything. I think it's an interesting proposition. So I don't know what will happen next year or in next events, but I think it's we have to learn about it. I think it's important for the industry. It is interesting that it is in our industry. Most everyone that heard for the first time about crypto or Bitcoin was in our events. I think the following year we had a company that had a wallet, and we gave $5 worth of Bitcoin, and to everyone that opened the door. So a lot of people they still tell me that my first Bitcoins were because I got that wallet, and et cetera, et cetera. So and it was I was I was just interested. I can't say. We still hold $325 that were paid in Bitcoin in 2013 or 14. Just because I thought somebody said, oh, I'm going to pay in Bitcoin, and I think that we were hooked with BitPay or something like that, and we said we accepted the payment, and we still do. But it's so your story reminded me the same thing, and of course it's been some years, things have changed. Now we have crypto exchanges and crypto companies participated in our industry, and some of them are doing pretty well. I remember the founder of Bitso, the first time he came, Pablo, and you remember that time?
Very well.
We had meetings with him. Bitso now it's a big company. It's done
$2 billion valuation now.
Yeah. So some of these companies that are now mostly providing exchange, consolidation of accounts to companies in the space. So providing another way to make payments, maybe a better foreign exchange. So that's great. Now let's move ahead. Now before we go into the challenges, opportunities, tell us, you're going to participate in some other sessions. You're moderating some of them. Tell me that so the participants who are listening to us can participate in the sessions that we will participate. So let's start with you, Eric.
Sure. Thanks, Hugo. So later on today, I'm going to be participating on a panel that's going to discuss software as a service and offering remittance as a service, and seeing what the opportunity is there, and really taking a step back, and not just from a regulatory standpoint, but seeing what are the different factors that play in. How does the partnerships, and like Joe, you very well mentioned there, is how do you factor something in that is optimal from the get-go, instead of taking 3 steps forward and then 2 steps back because we were too late in asking the compliance team to go through, which I think is incredibly important as far as bringing people on there. So please stay tuned for that one.
Thank you. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll be moderating a panel where we'll be focusing on enforcement actions, recent enforcement actions that have really reflected the compliance systems or the lack thereof of the companies who were caught up in these enforcement actions. And we'll talk about enforcement actions that were filed by FinCEN, by the CFPB, by the UK, and then there are some criminal cases as well. And what we'll try to do in the session is to sort of see whether there are any enforcement trends that have been exposed by these different enforcement actions over time. And based on the enforcement actions, what can we learn? What sort of focus can we put on our compliance system that we haven't invested before? And so again, every time the government or any government publishes that there's been an enforcement action or there's a criminal case, whatever it might be, there are things that we can take away from that, even if we weren't involved. We can learn a lesson based on the fact that the other guy out there got caught up and had to pay a fine, or maybe he had to spend time in the government's Holiday Inn for a little bit. But there are always lessons that we can learn from that, and that's what we'll be focusing on tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you, Andrew. Joshua.
I like the government's Holiday Inn. I'm going to start using that one. Certainly. So I am moderating a panel tomorrow on cannabis compliance. We have banking compliance professionals, and we also have the CEO of a digital payments company that's focused on the cannabis industry speaking on that as well. So that'll be really fun. And then I'm speaking on a panel that Joe is moderating tomorrow about regulatory compliance issues in the crypto space. So very excited for both of those.
Yeah, same here. So I'm actually involved in lots of panels today as a moderator and participation. So it's maybe like asking me to pick my favorite child, but I'm very excited. A lot of different topics. We're going to talk about managing state license. I mentioned that earlier with our work at ComplyFit and with BitAML. So I think that's going to be really important, how to manage and stay up with regulations and on top of regulatory matters at the state and federal level. And as Josh mentioned, participating on a panel together, discussing some of the challenges and nuances of compliance in the crypto space. And as well, I'm working with Carolyn on our advanced course for those in the crypto space, looking to increase their knowledge about AML compliance and how they can take their compliance practice at their institution to that next level.
So, great. Thank you very much. So I won't mention the many panels. I've been moderating some of them. Some in the Regtech world. I have also a Regtech course that which is 2 sessions, and I used some of Nirvana Farhadi's interview that I did with her as part of the course. So let's go now into what do you see, each one of you, and I'm going to go back and start with you, Joe. So what are the challenges and opportunities right now in this space in cross-border payments and transfers with respect to compliance and with respect to Regtech? And because you are the founder of a Regtech firm, ComplyFit, that's the name. So I want to start with you, and then we follow. What do you see as the challenges, and what opportunities you see for industry participants, whether they provide Regtech solutions or they need Regtech solutions in their institutions? Let's start with that.
Sure. Well, first, I think the opportunities for minutes are amazing. I mean, we've never been closer together despite how far apart we are. The remote control in your pocket, that smartphone that you have, can connect you to virtually anyone in the world. Be able to send money, whether that's through crypto in the industry that I'm in or through some of the traditional rails, connecting with folks through social platforms or in peer-to-peer marketplaces. We've never been closer together, and the opportunities and the ability, quite frankly, to start a company with technology, the barriers to entry are fairly limited from a sort of technical standpoint. Now, from a compliance standpoint, not so much, right? There are all these different nuances, and they vary from country to country and state to state. You're kind enough to point out our Regtech app helping folks on the state money transmitter side. But so again, as close as we are and as straightforward as it is to use this technology, the real challenges come in with knowing that regulation, unlike crypto, is not non-national, right? It has nationality, it has different cultural implications, as Andrew had pointed out before. So yes, as close as we are, we're somehow further apart. But I think with Regtech, there's a recognition from those, at least in the crypto space, and I think that extends to fintech, that something should go along with that from the compliance standpoint. If technology brings us close together, it makes money move faster, those consumers that are demanding that quick action, that ability to send funds right away, they can't be held back by sort of antiquated compliance systems. So it's those consumers that are putting pressure on the industry, and now we have a lot of Regtech applications that are helping regulation catch up with the business or operations side of some of these amazing platforms we see out there.
Great. Josh?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Joe. I guess one challenge that we see coming up, I mentioned this earlier, we're working with a company that's launching a stable coin to do remittance payments between the U.S. and a foreign jurisdiction. And, in the U.S., like, we have relationships built up with the regulators. We can send no action letters. There's a process to get this information right. But in this other jurisdiction, we don't know the regulators there, and we try to work with local counsel to build those relationships. And it's still very difficult, just from both getting in touch with these regulators, but also their rules may not be as developed as the US, right? So the challenge is getting these regulators
And
up to speed.
sometimes it's the other way around.
That's right. That's right. Oh, 100%. Yeah. No,
It's-
certainly.
No,
certainly.
it's amazing sometimes, because in some jurisdictions maybe the payment system is not as complex, and the central bank can say, okay, we're going to do it like that from now on. In the United States, you can't do that.
So you touch on where the opportunity is, right? So if your company can go out and build those relationships in the foreign jurisdiction, you can help implement rules that will obviously help your business and future businesses in that space. So that's just something that we're working through right now.
Great. Thank you very much. Andrew, from your vantage point.
So I guess I'll start with the opportunities. I mean, I would be pretty bullish going forward about the importance of not just compliance, but Regtech. And again, not only for financial institutions or MSBs, but really for anyone who is dealing in high value transactions, no matter what it is that's being bought and sold, whether it's money that's being bought and sold, whether it's some kind of a widget, to the extent that it's got a high value, we know enough now to understand that there's a money laundering risk there. And you can look back at years of prosecutions involving trade-based money laundering or whatever else it is. And, the international money laundering transactions are they are as likely at this point to involve, $1 million worth of computer parts being sold into Latin America as it is, money at this point, because, it's been around long enough, and you can see one case after another where the government's talking about trade-based money laundering and what it involves. So really, at this point, again, no matter who you are or what you do, if risk because of the nature of the transactions that you're engaged in, you really need to have some type of a compliance infrastructure. And if you think that every time you're making this international sale that you're going to be combing through the OFAC lists that are out there, or doing manual due diligence on your customer or whoever it is that maybe you're purchasing from, you're going to be tied up with this stuff forever. It's going to take forever. And so, having that type of program in place, I think is really worth its weight in gold. And, I think a lot of companies already know that, and more are really coming to the table every day. I think the one limitation there that really needs to be explored a little bit more and maybe talked about a little bit more is, when will those companies start viewing compliance as an asset as opposed to a cost? When will they start understanding that compliance doesn't only prevent them from being prosecuted by the Justice Department, but that compliance can really be used as a tool to connect the different parts of businesses, multinational businesses who may have many different product lines. They may be subject to laws in many different jurisdictions, et cetera. We can really have a central compliance program that links everybody together. It creates better morale. You have employees who are less concerned about violating the law. And overall, you can have much better connection between your rank and file personnel and management, especially when we include something like a hotline in the compliance program that we're implementing. And so, again, there's this sort of like an educational barrier, or perhaps it's a cultural one where, again, compliance is not a cost anymore. It's an asset, and it makes us a better company and allows us to thrive and avoid those types of pitfalls that many other companies have fallen into. The challenges overall are that, again, we're in the 21st century. We're dealing with things like cryptocurrency. I can engage directly with customers all over the world. But if I'm in the US, I still have US law to deal with. And the US law was not designed to deal with what we're talking about now. It can be pushed along, and the government can certainly use it, and the courts in the United States will absolutely go along with that without requiring Congress to make new laws. But again, we're a money transmitter. You're subject to 49 different licensing requirements in the United States. Now you've got the CFPB coming to the table. FinCEN's always there. OFAC is always there. And as far as crypto is concerned, you've got the other banking regulators who are also involved, the SEC and the CFTC, et cetera. It goes on and on and on. And so that is not changing. Okay, Congress is not going to make modernizing the financial laws a priority, because from law enforcement's perspective, the antiquated legal system, not legal system, but the antiquated regulatory regime that we have in the United States is perfect for prosecuting and forfeiting assets and things like that. So why bother changing that? But it's really, I think, going forward, going to be an understanding of there's nothing new that's under the sun. We've basically been having these same conversations for decades as new technologies have been developed. B, the laws that we have are not necessarily designed for all of that, but you can bark at the moon or you can deal with it. And I think that will be an ongoing process that won't change anytime soon. And it's really going to be a matter of viewing compliance, again, not only as a liability, not only as a cost, but as an asset that will allow you to thrive in that type of an environment and have a better company as well.
That was great.
It's brilliant that we're saying very similar messages just across different perspectives, right?
Yes.
That's the attorney perspective. And yes, we're always going to lead lawyers. I got that message very clear, but from innovators as well in the industry on that side. And what I'd like to share with you guys now is a little bit about from the revenue side and the sales part. And what I think is interesting is there are some things that have changed and evolved, but there are others that remain the absolute truths. And on an absolute truth, it's the objective of a company. The objective of a company is to make money, right? For the shareholders, for the individuals, for the employees, and to go through. But then what's changed is on the process side. And I think what the rest of the team has said over here is very valid, in which the compliance role has changed over time. And what I think is interesting is there's a physical example of this. Back in the 90s, I remember this from the compliance side. The compliance team was housed in a different office, in a different location. And then they were in the same office, but on a different floor. And nowadays, you're finally seeing them on the same darn floor as the C-suite there, right? Which is, at least on the physical side, you're seeing some progress. Yes. But what's the rationale for that? I think, Andrew, you referenced this very well. It's the compliance team was there to make sure that no pitfalls were going to be hit, that we're not going to get into over trouble and all. But a lot of the times this was after all the animals had escaped from the barn, the compliance team comes in and closes the door and says, okay, mea culpa, it's not going to happen. And they're there holding the bag. That's shifted, right? And I think that's one of the benefits of fintech, but I think that's not one of the benefits of the world that we live in today, which is rapidly accelerating with the different types of products that we see, in which the compliance team has to be much more proactively involved at the get-go, not there holding the compliance or to go through. And instead of managing the day-to-day process, and Joe, you mentioned this, there are the 50 different states that require different laws and regulations. And you also mentioned this as well, Josh, in which every country has its different ones. You could hire more and more compliance teams to manage that side, which I think is inefficient. Or you can start to outsource this to experts in the field and to really hone in and focus the compliance team to work with the sales team, the product team, the operations side, and the technology to avoid pitfalls. And this part, to me, if the cryptocurrency component is going to come true, there's going to be an opportunity to say, all right, what's the infrastructure going to look like to our customer base? What's it going to look like from a technology standpoint? What are the user interfaces with compliances, references, and recommendations to go through to avoid taking, oh, look, we've done this great technology. It's a great user journey. And the compliance team at the end saying, That's great, but you didn't factor in the KYC component until the end, and it has to be done at the beginning, and it goes through. So this is a level of improving optimization, the go-to-market side. And listen, here's the bottom line truth of this. This isn't done so people get a pat on the back. This is done so companies are able to succeed, because the companies that are not able to do this and not able to factor in the compliances, viewpoints, and perspectives to get a rapid go-to-market are going to fall by the wayside. Their valuation is going to go down. Their revenue is not going to be high, because the competition is going to be right there going forward. I think that's the key point that I wanted to share with you guys. But it's not always the grass is green, or there's not always the opportunity. The same opportunity is also a challenge. And I think this to me is something to factor in which you've got crypto, but you've got so many different stable coins. And you referenced stable coins, Josh. That's because there are how many? I see 55 on one trade point, but there are many more that come through.
And more coming.
And more coming. Exactly right. How is the compliance team expected to stay on top of everything in advance if the governments are not able to do that? And Hugo, you referenced this. The countries across the board have very different perspectives. There are ones that are very on top of it. Singapore, for example, which is very savvy. And then you have others, which in Latin America, it's a wide range of ones that have never heard of it, don't trust it, still believe, like Joe's previous CEO, saying it's only for criminals, versus a lot of different factors across the way. That to me is a huge challenge of how do you stay ahead of something in which a government can do? You can't be an expert in everything. What I have to say is try to focus, try to hone in. You're not going to be the expert on every single thing that the sales team, that the C-suite management, if the CEO asks you, what do you think about stablecoin XYZ versus going through Ripple or something to that effect? What's the answer going to be? To be determined. But if you're able to focus in on what the industry is and help to prioritize the direction of that company, but taking a very proactive stance to do that, I think that's the key component. And I think one of the best ways in order to do that is say, what's the expertise of your compliance team, of your team, versus what's something that you can outsource and go through? And listen, it's not sexy, Joe, what you're talking about, right? The 50 different states and to go through. It's an absolute necessity, though. And it's one of those things that that barn door that you have to take care of. But instead of focusing and hiring extra teams for that, if you can outsource and find a solution for that to be able to focus on really growing the business, I think that's where the opportunity lies.
Well, I tell you guys, when I put this panel together, I thought on the ideas we had discussed with you what to do, and it has blown my mind. It's beyond my expectations, sincerely, and I think for every one of you. I mean, because we as you said, we're coming from different backgrounds, but we have the same perspective on things, and this is important because this industry needs to grow. Traditional companies have to retire legacy system, and that's painful. I know fintech companies can start from scratch and build the systems, and they can leapfrog, and they are there. And and you see some banks buying fintechs because I just can't develop. And so there's so much happening. But as when you have a brand to defend, you have you have people that trust your brand, and that's important. And that's what I tell traditional companies is leverage your brand, but maybe you have to think differently. Maybe you have to change. Maybe you have to start some things from scratch, and that's where remittance as a service or other solutions or outsourcing this and that, or using Regtech companies to do this and that, because your regulator, as we said, and just needs to know that you're doing your best effort. This is where it lies. I mean, look, I'm doing my best. Look, I did this and that. We tell compliance professionals here, and I think every one of us agrees, just to be the best you can. Tell your company, tell your company owners, CEOs, this is what we lack. This is what we need. Keep a record of what you're telling your company, because you're personally liable for those things. So yes, we need a super breed of compliance professionals. That was Nirvana's Farhadi's message in what she's told us in the interview that I did before this panel. And this is where we are, and that's what we need. So really, thank you very much for your participation. This is great. I think we need to tell the industry. We'll promote this, because I would love for every company owner, every compliance professional in the industry to listen to this. I think that we were able to gather our thoughts. What are the challenges? But always so many opportunities. I'm amazed. I mean, I've been 35 years in this industry, 1987, and I entered the industry. I was working on migration before that with UNICEF, but I worked doing a very simple system to list remittances. And look where we are right now. So thank you very much. Thank you for everybody that participated. Any feedback, give it to us. If you want to talk to any of these guys, you can send us an email. We'll introduce them to you. Let's keep this conversation going. So thank you very